was speaking last night with a 9-year-old boy, and he said to me, "Oh, Sunday is going to be difficult." And I said, "Well, why?" He said, "It's a very hard gospel." It's a very hard gospel. Well, it is actually. He's quite right. What on earth is Christ saying in it? Is he telling us to be crafty in our dealings and get the better of other people like the dishonest steward in the parable? Not exactly. The dishonest steward is a kind of wheeler and dealer, I suppose, and he does have something, though, Christ says, to teach us. And clearly the whole passage is about money and goods, stuff, capital, as we might say. And Christ, our Lord, is showing us how to get these things right. We know they do loom fairly large in our lives. What's the right attitude towards money? How can we use it in a way that is pleasing to God and helpful to our neighbour and helpful for our eternal salvation? Well, I suppose the most striking lines come at the end. No servant can be the slave of two masters. You cannot be the slave both of God and of money. We may remember that in another form. You cannot be the slave both of God and of mammon. Mammon being a word used in our Lord's day for money and goods. Well, here's the first thing our Lord gives to us today. We're not to worship money. We're not to make a god of it. We're not to make it the be-all and the end-all of our life. We're not to think that being happy just means being rich. And we're not to rank people by the amount of money they have. If we do, we're making ourselves a servant of something that's meant to be our servant. We're getting things upside down, and we will actually make ourselves miserable, like Scrooge in Charles Dickens' famous story. We'll go dark and hard inside, and we're all too likely to end up using devious, not so good methods of getting money, all those injustices mentioned by the prophet Amos. It's not that money is a bad thing. It's not that it's wrong to try and make more of it by honest means or to take a higher paid job or whatever. It's a matter of where all this comes in our scale of value. It's a matter of our life as a whole. It's about where our heart is, where our real treasure is. I only have one brother, and I wish that I had had more brothers and indeed some sisters. And often I think people can be frightened to have more children because it means the family will be poorer. But then we may be depriving the children of something far more valuable than a certain standard of living, namely brothers and sisters, because brothers and sisters are a real treasure. And I know we don't always feel that, but they are. They last. They enrich the whole of our lives. They will give us nephews and nieces. There's something real to love and fill our hearts, because persons are worth far more, infinitely more, than things, and we are worth more than we have. Our Lord is telling us to get our priorities right. That first of all. And then there's a second thing. This parable, this strange parable, is about a steward. He's like a factor on an estate, and he doesn't actually own what he's administering. And that's a symbol for us in relation to things and money. they're not really ours. Like everything that exists, they belong, in the end, to God, and in fact to everyone. And later on, Jesus says, if you cannot be trusted with what is not yours, who will give you what is your very own? What is not yours. If you cannot be trusted with what is not yours, that's money. It's not ours. I think Mother Teresa of Calcutta used to say that God has all the money in the world, and the problem for us is just how to access it. We are only stewards. And we say the same nowadays, don't we, about creation and the environment. And I think if we have that attitude, it makes us freer and less anxious, and at the same time encourages us to be responsible, trustworthy stewards. It's all about attitude. If God has given us material blessings, they're not just for our private enjoyment. Wise parents will think of their children, and so on. And this comes to the third thing. And so I tell you this, Jesus says, use money, tainted as it is, to win you friends, and thus make sure that when it fails you, they will welcome you into the tents of eternity. This is where the dishonest steward comes in. He knew his master was about to fire him, so he reduced the debts of the other workers on the estate and got the right side of them. That meant that when he was sacked, he would have friends who'd open their homes to him. Well, it's a parable. But if we use our money for good, we will have friends to welcome us into our heavenly home. I knew a lady in a parish who helped a priest by visiting the sick and the elderly. She spent all her time more or less doing this, taking them Holy Communion, arranging for them to make confession and be anointed. And many of them were terminally ill, and she was with them when they were dying. And she helped many, many people die at peace with God. And surely, when she came to die, they would be there to welcome her. Well, she used her time and her energy in this wonderful way. But we can use some of our money too. Our Lord's being very practical here, slightly whimsical, I think, and of course he's a good storyteller. So when we come to die, money fails. We can't take it with us. And we will find ourselves knocking on the door of heaven. And he's saying, make sure you've got friends up there who'll open the door from the inside. Make sure you've got friends down here who, when you pass away, won't say, well, thank God he's gone, but will say, please God, remember all her kindness to me, to us. Well, there are so many needs in the world. We're at the collection today for Syria. But I knew one small monastery that wasn't at all wealthy, but it used to help to support a poor family in India. They just decided they would do that one thing. And they heard about this family, they contacted this family, and they made a regular contribution to the well-being of that family. And it's not so hard to find things like that. And I think if you can find something concrete, something specific, something involving other people in another part of the world, it makes it real. You really do make friends. And it's focused on particular people, and it leads to human contact. And God is never outdone in generosity. So we need never be frightened. Well, there it is. Let's not make a god of money, says our Lord. Let's think of it as a gift of which we are to be the wise and trustworthy stewards, and let's share it with others. Let's make friends for eternity. And thinking this, you know, we come to the church Sunday after Sunday and we hear a passage from the Gospels, one of the 4 Gospels, and other readings too, and the prayers and all of that. And what we're coming here to hear is the Gospel with a capital G. The Gospel in the big, broad sense, the truth that Christ has brought us. And the word gospel means good news. It means specifically good news of a victory. Of a victory. Good news of the victory, in this case, through the death and resurrection of our Lord, God's victory over sin and death and suffering and Satan. So where's the gospel in all what I've been saying about money, in all that this passage from the gospel is saying about money? Where's the good news? Where's the victory? I think it's in this, that our Lord is saying we are bigger than these things. Money, really, though it looms very large in our lives, we do have to worry about it. It has a great pull on us, but really, in the scale of values, it's a little thing. It's far, far less than who and what we are. We are made to have treasure, and Christ brings us treasure. You remember what St. John of the Cross says. When we die, we will be judged on love. When we die, St. Peter won't ask us, what was your salary? No, he won't ask us that. Oh, you've had a good salary, do come in. We like people like you. No, it won't be like that. It is, how much love did you have in your hearts? We're praying this week in the opening prayer, the collect, O God, who founded all the commands of your sacred law upon love of you and of our neighbour. Our Lord brings us the truth and the greatness and the real joy of ourselves, because our hearts are made for this double love, this great love of God and our neighbour. Jesus himself is God and man. We're made for the love of him, and through him for love of the Father and of each and every other human being. This is our real treasure. This is our greatness as human beings, this capacity to love. And our Lord comes to us in the Eucharist. He comes with his own great act of love on the cross, and he gives us the great treasure of himself, his body and blood, his gift of himself, so that we can love like him.